This episode is brought to you by Nordstrom. Summer's almost out and fall's calling. Luckily, Nordstrom has everything you need for the season ahead, all under $100. Discover new arrivals from your favorite brands like Mango, Princess Polly, Wave, Free People, BDG, and more. Whether you're planning a last-minute getaway, heading back to class, or refreshing your office looks, you'll find the latest trends and beauty must-haves without breaking your budget. It's easy, too, with free shipping, free returns, and in-store order pickup. Shop today, in stores, and at Nordstrom.com.
I'm 32, juggling family, working full-time, and earning a bachelor's degree. At University of Phoenix, I earn career-relevant skills with every 5-week course. Skills I can use now, not just after graduation.
Earn skills in weeks, not years. Visit phoenix.edu.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You are now entering the Stone Zone. Well, I returned this morning from Las Vegas, Nevada, where I attended the America First Ground Zero conference that was sponsored by the Gateway Pundit. The Gateway Pundit, of course, is the net-based news outlet that was probably the only place you could go during the time that I was subjected to a Soviet-style show trial in the Russian collusion hoax when I was fighting charges that I had lied under oath in my voluntary testimony to the House Intelligence Committee. The Gateway Pundit was one of the few places you could go for accurate and honest reporting about that outrageous violation of my constitutional rights. You see, I was not charged with a crime because I did anything wrong. I was charged with a process crime in order to pressure me into testifying falsely against President Donald Trump. You see, after Robert Mueller and the Justice Department spent tens of millions of dollars and could find no evidence whatsoever of Russian collusion with Donald Trump's 26th campaign, they decided to try to create it. You see, they wanted me to bear false witness against the president, which of course I refused to do. The Gateway Pundit was among the few places you could go for accurate coverage. I'll always be very grateful to Jim and Joe Hoft, the twin brothers, writing and covering news for the Gateway Pundit. Anyway, they had a great conference in Las Vegas. I was honored along with General Michael Flynn. I think most Americans are familiar with the horrific trial that the swamp put him through, as well as the greatest mayor in New York City history, Rudy Giuliani. It was a terrific conference, and I met many great patriots. Still getting a lot of feedback from the riff I did last week regarding Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon was, of course, fired from the Trump White House in 2017, essentially for leaking self-serving stories. I'll never forget when Steve Bannon's picture appeared on the cover of Time magazine with the headline, "Trump's Brain." This is ridiculous. The man responsible for the election of Donald Trump, no matter how improbable, was Donald Trump himself. He's not managed. He's not packaged. He's not scripted. He is his own man. And it was his own audacious strategy, his own decision to make illegal immigration a major national centerpiece issue of his campaign, for example, that elected Donald Trump. The truth is that when Paul Manafort left Donald Trump's campaign, he left behind a complete and very detailed written campaign plan. His successor, Steve Bannon, merely implemented that plan. But people say to me, what's your beef with Bannon? I mean, you and Steve are both Trump supporters. You're both MAGA, right? Well, my beef with him is really very simple. Steve Bannon testified to the House Intelligence Committee in 2018, around the same time that I did, under oath, and he was asked by Congressman Adam Schiff whether he'd ever talked to Roger Stone about WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, or the allegedly stolen emails. He said, and I quote, "No, never." When asked by Adam Schiff, on no occasion, Bannon said, "No, on no occasion. Never." That was, of course, the truth. You can imagine how surprised I was when Steve Bannon showed up at my trial in Washington, D.C. as a surprise witness for Robert Mueller. Kind of swept to the witness stand, dressed all in black, kind of like a fat Johnny Cash. Of course, wouldn't look me in the eye. And when asked the exact same question, did you ever talk to Roger Stone about WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, or these allegedly stolen emails? He said yes. Stone brought it up in every conversation we had in 2016. In fact, he went on to say, I considered Stone to be our access point to WikiLeaks. That is known as perjury, a lie. Two sworn statements, which, as Jonathan Turley pointed out, or the George Washington University law professor, pointed out for the New York Post, were direct contradicting each other. So that's the beginning of my problems with Stinky Steve. My other problem with him, quite frankly, is his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Bannon seeks Epstein out, according to the New York Post, seen multiple times at Epstein's palatial New York home. Also, according to other news outlets, flies to meet Epstein in Paris. Why would anyone associate with a man who at that point had been convicted of sex crimes in Florida? Former Bannon aide Sam Nunberg told me that Jeffrey Epstein had agreed to sponsor Steve Bannon's ongoing political activities. And we know that Bannon filmed 15 hours of an interview with Jeffrey Epstein. I believe the purpose of this planned documentary was to try to rehabilitate Epstein after Epstein was prosecuted for minor sex crimes in Florida. Now, in 2019, it was the Trump administration that would come back and charge Jeffrey Epstein with one count of child sex trafficking and a second count of conspiring to engage in child sex trafficking. So my question is a simple one. Why has Steve Bannon not released the 15 hours of video he has? I think the answer is because it was designed to try to rehabilitate Epstein. The idea of Steve Bannon running for president, which of course he leaked himself and then says he has no comment on the leak. Well, that's a ludicrous joke. Anyway, President Trump, of course, heading to Alaska on August 15th to meet with Vladimir Putin and presumably President Zelensky of Ukraine. Now, if I were Vladimir Putin, right now I would be carefully poring over the art of the deal. I know this about Donald Trump. He's not holding a meeting unless he knows what the results of that meeting are likely to be. So I'm going to assume, knowing him for 50 years, that he has the framework of a peace deal. He has certainly been living up to the promise of being a pro-peace commander-in-chief, seamlessly reversing decades of foreign policies that have only exacerbated conflicts throughout the world. So Trump helped negotiate a ceasefire between Thailand and Cambodia, put together a peace deal between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, ended violence between Pakistan and India. This list goes on and on. To me, it means that he well deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. That, of course, is decided by a Norwegian-based globalist elitist committee. I think it's unlikely that they will give him the prize, but it seems to me the Russians have already kind of signaled what's going to happen this week. They tentatively agreed to terms to stop the war in Ukraine, according to press reports. That whole war is a folly that was created due to the aggressive NATO expansion by the Biden administration. See, when the Russians agreed to the reunification of East and West Germany, the United States agreed in the Budapest Memorandum signed by Secretary of State James A. Baker, and later on in the Minsk Accords signed by the Bush administration, not to push Ukraine into NATO, which really is defined as not mounting NATO missiles, American missiles paid for by U.S. taxpayers, on the ground in Ukraine pointed at Russia. Sorry, but I don't see this as different than the situation in America in 1962, when the Russians mounted Russian ICBM missiles on the ground in Cuba, 90 minutes from our shore. And President Putin has made it clear from the beginning that was his line in the sand. So when President Trump ends the war between Russia and Ukraine, there will be little doubt that he will be among the most successful presidents in American history in terms of peacemaking. He is writing a diplomatic playbook that other presidents will follow for generations to come. A Nobel Peace Prize may not be enough for Trump. Perhaps they should put a spot on Mount Rushmore for him. I think that would be just as fitting. But let's kind of go through this. He gets a ceasefire between the radical Houthis and the U.S. That's it in Yemen. Back in May 6th of 2025, he declared an end to U.S. strikes on the Houthis, announcing an immediate ceasefire brokered by Oman that had halted the Red Sea shipping lanes. Then, as I said, the declaration of principles in June of 2025 between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda, this so-called Washington Accord ended one of the bloodiest conflicts in the history of the world. More recently, a peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Trump hosted the Armenian prime minister and the president of Azerbaijan at the White House just last week, where they signed a landmark peace declaration ending that conflict and establishing a U.S.-controlled transit corridor called the Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity, or TRIP. That's one thing I love about Donald Trump. He always puts his name on his accomplishments. Then, of course, there is the ceasefire that he got between Thailand and Cambodia. This took place in late 2025 after deadly border clashes. Thailand and Cambodia, thanks to Donald Trump interceding, agreed on a ceasefire right after the president's intervention, although some sources note that official confirmation of the U.S. mediation is unverified. Multiple credible sources say it was Donald Trump who brokered the deal. It is amazing to me that on top of all of this, the India-Pakistan ceasefire claim, where Trump purposely actually stated that he had de-escalated the tensions, even though official sources from India have attempted to deny that. I tend to believe President Donald Trump. Then, of course, there is the Israel-Syria de-escalation. This was reported by various statements from our own envoys, Steve Witkoff and Tom Barrack, our ambassador to Turkey, although there was no formal agreement by the parties involved. And then, of course, he's got a Israel-Iran ceasefire, which has so far held steady. Again, I think extraordinarily fragile. But there is no greater title that history can bestow than that of peacemaker. Trump ran as the peace candidate, and he is delivering in spades across the board. Now, the war between Russia and Ukraine is not over yet, and it won't be over until the ink is dry on the agreements. But I know Donald Trump. I've known a long time. I don't think he would be heading to Alaska unless he'd had the framework of a deal. A Russian statesman specifically said the United States had made a proposal which the Russians found acceptable. So it may be premature to say that peace is at hand, but it certainly sounds to me like Donald Trump is about to achieve his greatest breakthrough when it comes to world peace. The American people are a little shocked. You see, we're not used to political figures actually delivering on the pledges they make during their presidential campaigns, but Donald Trump is not a politician. He will never be a politician. He's a leader of a political reform movement, and it is having its impact in our foreign policy as he, I think, positioned himself for the Nobel Peace Prize. Even if they don't give it to him, the American people completely get it. I'm Roger Stone. You're tuned in to the Stone Zone here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial because we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back in the Stone Zone here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. Last Friday, Attorney General Pam Bondi named Ed Martin, Deputy Attorney General, as the special prosecutor to investigate mortgage fraud allegations regarding both Senator Adam Schiff and New York Attorney General Letitia James. James is being accused of falsely listing her Norfolk, Virginia-based home as her primary legal residence in order to unlawfully receive a lower mortgage rate and a lower insurance rate. Now, it's obviously a problem because under the New York state law and Constitution, if a Virginia residence is her principal legal residence, she would be ineligible to be New York Attorney General. In those documents, she also said that her daughter would make it her principal residence, but actually, thanks to the investigative journalism of Sam Antar and Joel Gilbert, both of whom visited the Norfolk-based home, neither Letitia James nor her daughter are living there as required by law under the mortgage. She also, on another occasion, in order to qualify for a certain lower interest federal mortgage for investment properties, claimed that an apartment complex that she owned, which was required to have under 5 units, specifically 4 units, had 4 units. The problem is that, once again, it had 5 units. These are crimes for which other people have been prosecuted and found guilty. Adam Schiff allegedly pulled a similar scheme. He claimed that his condo in Burbank, California, and his home in Potomac, Maryland, were both his primary legal residence. Therefore, he got a tax break in both states, and he got lower mortgage rates and lower insurance rates. It's interesting to note that former U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara put out a statement defending Adam Schiff, denying the charges, saying that they had been debunked. They haven't been debunked. And saying that this was somehow payback for the fact that Senator Adam Schiff had opposed special counsel Ed Martin's appointment as U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. It's ironic that Preet Bharara is going to have the time to represent Adam Schiff because my sources tell me that former U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara is among of those who will be brought in front of a grand jury shortly to discuss their own role in the Russian collusion hoax. It has been accurately reported that Attorney General Pam Bondi has already appointed a prosecutor, and a grand jury has been impaneled to begin hearing the evidence based on the disclosures by the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, that have completely exposed Barack Obama, Vice President Joe Biden, National Security Advisor Susan Rice, Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, Attorney General, Acting Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller, Hillary Clinton, John Podesta, and many others. My friends, I think justice is coming. Clearly, it is coming for Letitia James. Remember her? She's the one who said no one is above the law. I think she's going to find out very shortly that that includes her. You're listening to the Stone Zone. Whatever you do, don't go away because we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back in the Stone Zone. Back during the 2016 campaign for president, Donald Trump said that the legalization of marijuana was a states' rights issue and that each state should make its own decision. He made it clear that he himself did not support the use of marijuana, but as a conservative, he thought it should be up to the states. At this point, 38 states have legalized some form of cannabis, usually for medicinal use, yet federally, it remains a Schedule I drug. That's on the same level with heroin and cocaine and far more dangerous substances. Last week, President Trump said he's considering changing the federal classification of cannabis from a Schedule I to Schedule III. I favor, personally, complete deregulation. I think we should treat marijuana, cannabis, the same way we treat hemp, which President Trump legalized in the Farm Bill during his first term. With many, many states now having marijuana legal as medicine, they still have, because of federal law, businesses who sell marijuana have problems with banks. Banking services are unavailable under federal law for those who are in perfectly legal state businesses. The basis of my support is very simple. When my own father was dying of cancer, he had no appetite and he was in horrific pain. I recognized that the OxyContin they were giving him was really just making him much sicker. Also, he was beginning an addiction to that drug, which destroyed his digestive system. He was literally down to about 125 pounds. That was the point at which my sisters and I decided that, well, we would try to get him to smoke some marijuana in the interests of his suffering. And he almost immediately increased his appetite, put on weight, and he dealt much more easily with this horrific pain from his cancer. It was at that point that I became a supporter of legalization. I actually think deregulation makes more sense, but this is a step in the right direction. If President Trump makes this decision, he will likely characterize marijuana now as a Schedule III drug. This would be a massive victory for President Trump and for the American people. Marijuana legalization is overwhelmingly popular with the public, who recognizes that alcohol, which we sell and regulate and tax, is far more dangerous and far more deleterious to health than cannabis. The medicinal properties of cannabis can no longer be denied, but the Schedule I classification has stopped the funding for a lot of the additional exploratory scientific study that I think is necessary that could unlock other medicinal and health benefits of what is a natural substance. The notion that marijuana should be classified with heroin as a Class 1 or Schedule 1 drug, frankly, is preposterous. The federal war on drugs has been a failure by every metric. It was Joe Biden who wrote the 1994 crime bill. That was the bill that mandated the harsh mandatory penalties for the first-time nonviolent crime of possession of small amounts of drugs for personal use. Yes, it's true the war on drugs was launched by President Richard Nixon, but that war on drug was focused on drug traffickers, drug smugglers, and drug kingpins. It was Joe Biden, as the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, who wrote the 1994 crime bill, and it was Bill Clinton who signed it into law. I think at this juncture, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of poor people and disproportionately African Americans have been incarcerated because of the 1994 crime bill. It's time to wind down this modern-day drug prohibition. It has been a failure in the 1920s when they tried it with alcohol, just as much as it is a failure when it comes to cannabis 1 century later. This decision should be a no-brainer for the president, and it will win over, I think, many independent voters and younger voters, libertarian voters, in next year's crucial midterm elections. So I hope the president follows through on this pledge. I say first we reschedule, then we deschedule. I've actually gone out and put a trademark on the name Roger Stone. Who knows? I might sell my own brand. Meanwhile, the so-called safe injection sites in New York City, those are locations where drug addicts are free to shoot up heroin, have predictably backfired and are causing rampant degenerate behavior in public, according to a report in the New York Post. The injection center, called On Point New York City, has resulted in dope-fueled junkies having depraved public sex stoned out of their minds as pedestrians pass by. There are 2 of these locations open in New York City, and they have been open since 2021. They've received a stunning $16.4 million in taxpayer funding from the city's Department of Health to operate. Now, President Trump has signed an executive order targeting these types of centers that enable addicts to pursue their drug addiction. He signed the Ending Crime and Disorder on America's Streets bill late last month. This executive order makes sure that no federal discretionary grants are used to fund these sites for junkies. President Trump also blocked a so-called safe injection center from operating in Pennsylvania during his first administration, a move that was affirmed as legal by multiple courts. And then when challenged in the U.S. Supreme Court, well, Donald Trump won. So there is no right to have these injection sites. They have been a disaster for New York City, and I commend the president. It is time to close them. Meanwhile, America is embracing open source artificial intelligence under the Trump administration. China has actually been dominating in the field of open source AI, enabled by the Biden administration's policies that severely restricted innovation in the field of artificial intelligence. But frankly, that is rapidly changing as the Trump administration pursues the policies of American AI dominance. I've used the various AI applications, Grok, ChatGPT. I still find that much of the information that they give you is incorrect. For example, Grok will continue to tell you that Lee Harvey Oswald is responsible for the murder of John F. Kennedy. I think that is incorrect. I think at this point, there's overwhelming evidence to indicate that that's not true. If it is true, why then, when the Dallas police subject Lee Harvey Oswald to a paraffin test, why are there no powder burns on his face or his chest or his arms? If he had allegedly fired a leaky World War II vintage Italian Army Carcano carbine, he would have had powder burns, but he had none. I just use that as one of many examples. I actually saw a Grok answer the other day that said that Roger Stone was on on Jeffrey Epstein's list. I'm not in his phone book, nor am I on his the FAA manifest. In fact, I am the first author in the country to expose those things in my book, The Clinton's War on Women, back in 2015. So AI is, to say the least, imperfect. I also think it's extraordinarily dangerous. You can see number of videos online of me saying things that, well, I never actually said. But I ask you, look very carefully when you see those videos. You will see several things. One, you never actually see my mouth or my lips saying the words that are attributed to me. They're always obscured by a cell phone or a microphone or some other device. And then secondarily, look carefully at the background, and you will see the background changes in a way where trees in a moving car, for example, disappear. AI is extraordinarily dangerous. Among other things, I think we need a law regarding impersonation. In other words, those operating AI should not be allowed to create videos or audios using your likeness or your voice, putting words in your mouth. I've seen it done to Barack Obama, seen it done to Joe Biden, I've seen it done to Donald Trump, and God knows I've certainly seen it done to me. So I favor such a law. The sooner, the better. OpenAI released 2 open weight language models, which gives away their training parameters to the public. This allows developers to easily analyze and create models for specific tasks. I think this spurs innovation and efficiency. Meta, I'm not a big fan of theirs, but they announced a collaboration with Red Hat to create a fully open source AI model in May. This follows guidelines set out in the Trump administration's AI Action Plan, which is meant to combat China's approach to artificial intelligence. China's lack of safeguards in their application of AI makes it dangerous and easier for users to exploit it and indeed weaponize it, most likely in their case by design. If America cannot bridge the gap in this field, most of the world will be held hostage to Chinese artificial intelligence tools. That would make us a dangerous world indeed. Of course, there are many potential dangers to AI and dangers to employment and human freedom. But with the Trump administration's blueprint, we can have some solace that we will be steering artificial intelligence towards a potential to actually help mankind rather than hinder it. The continuing saga of congressional redistricting in Texas continues. It's funny to hear Democrats complaining after using the addition of illegal immigrants into the U.S. Census when they're counting population, and then using those census counts to do congressional districting in Illinois, California, California, and New York, and Pennsylvania. Now, suddenly, Democrats are upset because Republicans in Texas intend to implement a new congressional redistricting bill that only counts U.S. citizens in the redistricting. This has caused a group of Democrat legislators in the lower house to leave the state in an open attempt to prevent a quorum from voting on the redistricting plan. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton has filed a lawsuit that will vacate those legislative seats held by Democrats who are abdicating their responsibilities and fleeing the state to prevent Texas from approving this new redistricting plan that would add 5 new Republican House seats. Paxton was quoted as saying, "The rogue Democrat legislators who fled the state have abandoned their duties, leaving their seats vacant. These cowards deliberately sabotaged the constitutional process, and they violated their oath of office that they were sworn to uphold. Their out-of-state rebellion cannot go unchecked, and the business of Texas must go on." Paxton has asked the Texas Supreme Court to declare what has been clear from the beginning, that is, that the runaway members have officially vacated their offices in the Texas House. Paxton, who's currently running for the U.S. Senate, challenging the incumbent Republican, Senator John Cornyn, in the Republican primary, has obviously made this an issue in that race. Paxton has consistently shown himself to be a strong America First Republican, and the state of Texas would be immeasurably better having him in the Senate, in my opinion, but Cornyn has supported Governor Abbott of Texas and Attorney General Paxton in their determination to give these Democrat lawmakers the boot. They deserve the criminal charges that are coming next for their despicable antics. They have illegally raised money to support their fleeing the state. Turns out they're holed up in a hotel owned by J.B. Pritzker, the rotund governor of Illinois. I think he might be charged with aiding and abetting, but then I'm not a lawyer, so what do I know? Thanks for joining us. You're tuned in right here at the Stone Zone on the Red Apple Audio Networks. Please don't go away because we'll be right back with more of today's top political news.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome. We're back in the Stone Zone. President Donald Trump has accepted the resignation of the acting IRS Commissioner Billy Long, who will now replace, at least temporarily, with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in a shakeup that will bring the IRS in line with the America First financial agenda for the Trump administration. In my view, Scott Bessent is among the president's very best appointees. The Secretary Treasurer is a libertarian, a believer in tax reduction, cutting regulation, gold, and has done an excellent job in implementing President Trump's mandate to get better tariff deals with our trading partners. For those who weren't paying attention, in the month of June, for the first time in 15 years, we have had a surplus in the United States government. That has not happened in a long, long time. It's because Secretary Bessent, working with President Donald Trump in his direction, has brought millions of dollars to the federal treasury. Bessent is a Wall Street whiz. He once did work for George Soros, but that was prior to Soros being involved in politics. And he made millions of dollars as a money manager for Soros, which only proves his brilliance. I think he'll do a great job until a full-time IRS commissioner can be found. It's time to start downsizing the IRS anyway. In my opinion, we should actually phase them out. Until 1913, the United States government was completely and totally financed on the basis of tariff revenue. We had no federal income tax. 1913, the Federal Income Tax Act passed, and of course, federal income taxes have increased since that time astronomically. President Trump has openly mused about the possibility of doing away with the federal income tax system, and even late last week was hinting about it on Truth Social. Tariffs are now bringing in amazing revenues, and they should be used to fund the national government. The income tax was never meant to be mandatory and permanent to begin with. So perhaps it is time to go back to the Constitution, sound money, and repeal the 1913 Federal Income Tax Act. We found out shockingly on Friday that former Attorney General Bill Barr actually colluded with Georgia prosecutor Fani Willis on Donald Trump's RICO case. Recent disclosures from Project Veritas showed that Attorney General Bill Barr colluded with corrupt Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis on a RICO case that included Mayor Rudy Giuliani and a number of other Trump allies. It was journalist and whistleblower Patricia Lellis who came forward to expose how Attorney General Bill Barr plotted this RICO charge against Trump because he believed it would be almost impossible for Trump to defend. After becoming acquainted with Barr through her work as an assistant to media personality Armstrong Williams, Lellis became privy to all this information. She kept copious notes and she reported it to the FBI. No surprise that the FBI did nothing whatsoever. So we now know that Bill Barr, who had been a CIA attorney prior to his service in the second and first Bush administrations, ultimately became Donald Trump's attorney general, was involved in a conspiracy to try to remove the president of the United States and to charge him in Georgia. This is not shocking news. I knew that it was Bill Barr, who as a CIA lawyer oversaw the illegal importation of millions of dollars worth of cocaine into Mena, Arkansas, in the illegal operation to raise money to fund the Nicaraguan Contras in violation of the Boland Amendment, which had been passed by the U.S. Congress. You won't find this kind of news anyplace other than right here in the Stone Zone. Thank you for joining us in today's show, and until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?